everyone. Welcome back to My Life with MS. I'm Jen, and if you're new here, this podcast is where I share my journey with multiple sclerosis. This episode is a part of a series where I dive deep into my personal experiences with different tests, treatment, and lifestyle changes that have helped me navigate this life with multiple sclerosis. This is actually part 6 of the series, and if you are just hopping on for the first time, I highly recommend that you start at part 1 so you can get a full scope and full understanding of where I'm coming from and where I have been. My story is very, very unique, and there's a lot of hard lessons learned along the way. My hope is that this podcast reaches those people who are looking for another option, who are interested in discovering the root cause to why they have multiple sclerosis in the first place. If that is you, please subscribe and please share this with your friends and family. There is so much to uncover, and there's so much about the human body that we will be covering in this podcast, and I cannot wait to share that information with you. Before we get started, I have to say a little disclaimer. What I share on this podcast and in these episodes is purely based on my own experiences, my own research, and strongly my faith. I am not a doctor or medical professional, and none of this should be taken as medical advice. If anything I discuss resonates with you, please consult your doctor or medical team before making any changes to your health regimen. With that said, let's dive in. In my last episodes, we talked about how prayer and fasting actually led me down a path that landed me on doing a stool sample and a test for EBV. And we will get into each of those tests, what they are and what they mean, and what my results were. And I promise I won't get into the details so much, but I do want to provide a high-level overview so that you understand why these two tests might be beneficial, and it might be beneficial for you. So one of the biggest things I've been learning about in my MS journey is the role that the gut health plays in autoimmunity. Our digestive system does so much more than just process food. It's deeply connected to our immune system, inflammation levels, and even neurological health. So when my doctor suggested doing a comprehensive stool test, I knew it could give me valuable insights into what was going on inside my body. So what is a stool test? A stool test analyzes different aspects of your gut health, including the balance of good and bad bacteria in your microbiome, levels of inflammation in your gut, presence of pathogens like parasites, yeast overgrowth, and harmful bacteria, and how well your body is digesting and absorbing nutrients. All of this is so fascinating to me and so interesting. It's things that I've been learning over the course of that past year, and how I was really testing out things with food and how I felt after I would eat food. So I was very interested in taking this test. And a lot of people may not know this, but when someone says your gut, what is the first thing that comes to mind? I know that back then it was just my stomach. But what I have now learned is that the gut is actually everything in your digestive system. The gut consists of your stomach and your small intestine and your large intestine. So when we say we're testing for yeast overgrowth or harmful bacteria in the gut, it's going to account for everything from A to Z. The whole digestive system is going to be looked at. And that was very interesting to me. I definitely wanted to do this test. So for someone with MS or any autoimmune condition, this kind of test can be a game changer because gut inflammation and the imbalance of bacteria can contribute to worsening symptoms overall. So I did the test, and it's not as bad as you think. Don't let your imagination run wild here, but it was totally doable. Totally fine, totally doable. I would do it again. It took several weeks for me to get those results back. And when I got them back, I got a giant PDF full of just everything I ever wanted to know about my gut and digestive system. And it had these markers that were testing for, it was like a write-up of what the results were in every section of my digestive system, and then also what those results meant. So it was very clearly defined where it was like cancer signals are yes or no, or autoimmune conditions, yes or no. It was just a really good report. So I just highly recommend to have this in your back pocket because it's really, really interesting and will show you so much clarity about what's going on inside your body. So let me remind you, the time of this test was in July of 2024. So I had already been doing about 6 or 7 months worth of this healing journey and experience where I was doing all the fasting. I was learning everything about food. I was doing all of the parasite cleanses and the heavy metal detoxes. And I'd been working so hard for about 7 months at this point. And I had been feeling so much better. I was a new person, but I knew that I wasn't 100% there. And so through that prayer and fast that I told you about in my last episode, it brought me to these last 2 tests. And when I got these results, I was still trying to figure out what was causing certain symptoms that still haven't gone away. And the biggest symptom that I had, honestly, since that first big allergic reaction I had to Digestive, that's back in 2019, the worst symptom that I had that you've heard me talk about is chronic fatigue. And I mean bad. My body gets completely wiped out. It would happen after having a heavy meal or just throughout the day. I'd just be working. There'd be a stressful moment and I would crash completely. I would actually fall asleep. I would have a blanket and a pillow under my desk and I would have to just fall asleep wherever I was at. I didn't have time to get myself to the bed or to get myself to a couch. I would literally have to just shut down and lay on the floor and take a 5 to 10 minute nap. That's how heavy weighted the chronic fatigue was. So I just want to put that in perspective. So that fatigue did lighten up after the fasting and after the changing of my diets. It lightened up, but it was still lingering around. I would still have these almost like attacks where I would be driving and I would be hit with fatigue. That was one big area where I was still trying to figure out and work backwards on how can I heal or get rid of this chronic fatigue. Okay, so now fast forward to this stool test and these results. Okay, so when my results came back, they showed that I had high levels of inflammation in my gut. And I mean the highest of levels you can imagine. Like on the chart, like here's the line, here's where I was at. Like it was wild. And this is again after all my fasting and diet changes and everything. So there was something wrong with my gut. This made a lot of sense too, because I would still experience these fatigue attacks. And I still had the buzzing at that time. So this is the buzzing in my legs, buzzing in my hands, buzzing in my arms. So I had a massive imbalance in my gut bacteria, specifically an overgrowth in harmful bacteria and a deficiency in beneficial strains of bacteria. One of the biggest answers that I got during this whole experience, and it's so crazy that prayer and fasting brought me here, is that the biggest thing on this test, the number one thing that came back with terrible, terrible numbers, was that I tested positive for SIBO. SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It was terrible in my system. Terrible numbers. Okay. I had never heard of SIBO before. I didn't know what we were looking for. Originally, I just wanted to see what was going on. And this was an answer that I swear to you had some sort of divine intervention, because I would have never known about this if I didn't get tested for it. So what is SIBO and how do you treat it? So SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and it happens when bacteria that is normally found in the large intestine start growing in the small intestine. This can lead to a lot of digestive issues, including bloating and gas, abdominal pain, diarrhea or constipation, nutrient malabsorption, heavy fatigue, and brain fog, which makes MS symptoms feel so much worse. I know for sure the fatigue and brain fog is exactly where I lived for the last 5 years. And to go a step further in explaining what SIBO is, because I didn't fully understand it, maybe just until like a few days ago, honestly. But I'm learning about the anatomy of the small intestine and the large intestine. And here's what I learned in class. So you have your small intestine, right? It's super long. And then it goes into your large intestine. Your large intestine is then the last part of the process, and then you go potty. So between those two intestines, there is actually a barrier. There's like a flap or a barrier. And that can get damaged by chronic inflammation. And when it's damaged so much over time, the particles in the large intestine that should actually be pushed out actually go back up. And when they go back up, it creates a bacterial infection. And I had like a really bad case of that. So that's what SIBO is. So that's how that all plays out. And I understand it so much more clearly now. After these results came through, my doctor prescribed a series of antibiotics. When I was done with the antibiotics, I felt like I woke up from a bad dream. I literally felt lighter. I felt better. I felt energy. Like I didn't have to work hard for energy. And in the, right before that whole treatment, I was focusing on energy when it comes to like, I specifically could not eat XYZ because I would crash. After the SIBO treatment, after the antibiotics, and I believe I got rid of the bad bacteria, I did do another regimen of just probiotics every single day, enzymes. I did the whole thing for a few weeks to kind of build back the good bacteria. And I just felt like a totally new person. I think one of the biggest things was that I just didn't have the buzzing anymore. And if you have multiple sclerosis or any sort of autoimmune condition, you might understand what I mean when I'm referring to buzzing. And I would just have buzzing down my arms constantly, buzzing down my legs. If you just lay to rest, if you try to sleep, you just have buzzing constantly in your eyebrows and your nose and your face. And like, it's just constant. It's everywhere. And sometimes it's a heavier intensity, and at times it's a low intensity. And I think almost guaranteed every single night I had buzzing up until this point. And I accepted that as just my new normal. And so much so that I probably didn't talk about it as much because it only really was noticeable at night when I was laying down. And after this treatment, I'm telling you, like, I just don't have it anymore. I don't notice it anymore. I don't have it as strongly. And I believe that after this treatment, after rebuilding that gut bacteria, the good gut bacteria, that I don't know, I'm a new person. That fatigue, that chronic fatigue left. It is no longer there. And I believe wholeheartedly that those antibiotics did their job. I was able to heal that part of my body and my lower intestine into my large intestine. And just like heaven's doors were opened because God brought me to that test. God brought me down the path to discover what was going on in my system, to fix it. And then here we are. So I cannot give God enough praise about that because I would have never, ever, ever done this or gone down this road without his help. And again, during that prayer and fasting, that's when these answers kind of came to me, and these opportunities came to me, and I was able to really follow a path that was so wildly clear. So I just do give glory to God for that. But let me dive into part 2 to this. So when we got those results back, my doctor read through the PDF, and she noticed something. I can't really repeat what she had noticed, but she was like, we need to get tested for EBV. So EBV is a whole nother topic that we need to go over. And I need to talk about how EBV was a seed that was planted in my head a year prior. I have it in my journal to get tested for EBV, and I didn't know what it was at that time. So in my last episode, when I talk about prayer and fasting, and I'm going over how there was something that kept coming up, reoccurringly coming up, and the stool sample was there, yes, but truly it was EBV. There were a few random situations where I was talking to literally random people on the plane. I don't know why these conversations started. I'm not normally a chatty Kathy on the plane or for any reason, but I remember sitting next to a dietitian, and we became friends, and she had kids, I had my kid, and we were just going over everything. And I told her about my diagnosis, and I was in the process of healing, and I was really interested in diet. And so she unloaded to me all the things diet related. And then the topic of EBV came up then. And that was literally a year prior to me getting tested for EBV. So let me tell you what EBV is before I talk about it anymore, because I can understand, like, it doesn't make any sense right now. So what is EBV? EBV is the Epstein Barr virus. It's a virus that most people get at some point in their lives, but often it stays dormant in the body. Research has shown a strong link between EBV and autoimmune conditions like multiple sclerosis. Some studies suggest that a reactivated EBV infection could be a major trigger in the development and progression of MS. So I got tested for it, which is a blood sample, and those results came back positive for reactivated EBV. This meant that the virus, which had likely been dormant in my system for years, had become active again. So what did this mean for my health? Reactivated EBV can contribute to chronic fatigue, brain fog, immune system dysregulation, and increased inflammation in the body. For someone with MS, this is a big deal, since MS is an autoimmune disease where the immune system attacks the nervous system. Having a chronic viral infection like EBV could be adding to the immune system's confusion and worsening symptoms. So I knew that this EBV subject matter was something to take very seriously. And what's crazy is that the word EBV, Epstein Barr, I have seen it in a lot of the books I was reading. I've seen it in a lot of the research that I was doing, and I just never thought like a reason like, maybe I should get tested for it. But I went back through my journals over the whole course of that year, and I mentioned it so many times. It just came up, but I just never had the urge to actually get tested for it. I just didn't know why. So I'm very thankful that through my prayer and fasting, that was another test that came up again. And I was like, okay, I need to ask about this. Anyways, so the test showed skyrocketing numbers as well. I got tested positive for SIBO with crazy numbers. I got antibiotics for that and felt great. And then I also tested positive for EBV. So my approach to managing EBV was to go the natural route. And so that meant I needed to take antiviral supplements like lysine, immune supporting nutrients like increasing my vitamin D, zinc, and vitamin C, and overall reducing stress and prioritizing rest because stress can reactivate EBV. And then the last thing is to continue on with my clean anti-inflammatory diet to support my immune system. So I've been working since July to manage the EBV. I will say though, with that antibiotics treatment and how I felt after that treatment to get rid of SIBO, I'm like 10 million times better of a human being. I don't have the buzzing. I don't have chronic fatigue. I feel wonderful. And so the EBV testing results are there, and I'm working towards managing and lowering the viral load of EBV as much as possible. I think the point I'm trying to make here is that it was really good information to know. So now I know I had SIBO. I took care of that with antibiotics, and now I tested positive for EBV. And the doctor, based on the results, the doctor said that it's very likely that I've had EBV since I was younger. So the EBV, the Epstein Barr virus topic, is still something I'm actively learning about and I'm actively trying to manage. And I would absolutely love to get retested for it in a few months here and see if those numbers went down. Do the stool sample again and get tested to see if SIBO is still active. There are things that us as warrior detectives, right? I feel like I'm being an MS detective. I'm working backwards and I'm trying to unravel and unfold what am I doing in my body or what's happening in my body that I could control. And getting these tests done was a huge step forward in me discovering what's going on with my health. So if you take anything from this episode, I highly recommend to talk to your doctor about getting a stool sample test to see what's going on in your digestive system. I also would mention getting tested for EBV and just to see what those numbers are, see if you've had it in your past, see if it's activated or if it's dormant. Mine was, it said activated, but it was so high level of inflammation that I wasn't contagious. Like it wasn't viral or anything like that. It was just high levels of inflammation in my body. And what this is also telling me too is that if I were to think back about my journey so far, and I'm just, let's pretend that under all of this is an absolutely healthy person. Okay. It's a healthy Jen, 30 something years old, works out, whatever, eats well, just absolutely healthy person. And then you take all of those things, you pretend that each one of those is a 20-pound weight. So if you take a 25-pound weight and put it on my shoulders of, let's say the first thing I did was, eating terribly, eating all the gluten and all the dairy and adding that weight to my shoulders. So the gluten weight and the dairy weight and the fast food weight and the terrible addiction that I had to chocolate and then the alcohol weight and everything that I was willingly, I was eating, I was controlling that. I was willingly eating all of those things and consuming all of those things. And I had all of those stacked, those 25-pound weights on my shoulders of those poor food choices. Then you add the metal in my mouth from those permanent retainers and all the dental work that I did and the mercury fillings. And those are each 25-pound weights. And you add those to my shoulders. Then you look at the parasites that are possibly in my gut, in my digestive system. You add that 25-pound weight to my shoulders. And then you take SIBO, an infection in my small intestine, and you add that weight. And that one's probably 50 pounds of weight. And then you take EBV, and that is another 50 pounds of weight. So if you can imagine, under all of this weight is an absolute healthy person, but I am completely smashed down. I am a pancake at this point with the weight of all the things that are causing harm to my body. And that's how I visualize it. And over the past year, over the past 2 years, I've been slowly taking those weights off. I've been slowly lifting those weights off of my shoulders and tossing them into the ocean because I will never see those again. And I am slowly but surely over time standing a little bit taller. I have more energy. I have more clarity. I am discovering more about myself. I'm discovering more about the human body, which I took biology in college. Don't remember a single thing, but it's really fascinating to me and really interesting. And I feel like the weight of even the initial diagnosis has been lifted. And I'm continuing to dive into this and to learn more. And I'm excited that you guys find this interesting and that maybe this can relate to you. I truly, truly hope that you are advocating for yourself and that you're listening to these points that I make. I'm not providing medical advice. This is my experience, but I strongly feel that there is a reason why I'm sharing this with you. There's a reason why that you're listening to this right now. There's a reason why you're taking notes and you're subscribing and you're following along, because the stuff that I have done in the last 2 years have been absolutely life-changing. And I had a child during that time and completely turned my life around. And I just want everyone to know that these things are possible if you peel back the layers and you slowly but surely take off these heavy weights off your shoulders so that you can be more free and that you can be happy again. You can have all this energy again, and you're not so weighed down with all of the chronic inflammation that your body may be experiencing. In my next episode, I'm going to share with you the most insane MRI results that I've ever received and what I'm doing today to maintain my health and also what I'm researching. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to the channel. Please drop a comment below with your questions. I would love to hear from you. Navigating chronic illnesses is basically like putting together a big puzzle. Sometimes we don't realize how many pieces there are until we start digging deeper. For me, looking into my gut health and EBV helped me understand why my body was struggling and gave me a clear path forward. If you're dealing with autoimmune issues or chronic symptoms, I encourage you to work with a knowledgeable doctor and explore these areas. Your gut health, your viral load, your immune system all play a huge role in how you feel day to day. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of My Life with MS. If you found this episode helpful, I'd love for you to share it with a friend, leave a review, add a comment, and subscribe. Your support means the world to me, and I will see you on the next episode.